Recently, the patch notes were revealed for the up-and-coming mid-season patch 13.10. This patch will bring with it big change to the current items, as well as a whole host of new and returning items, which has really got the community talking. Now, whilst the majority of players are focused on these shiny new items they get to play around with, pro players and coaches across the world have been up in arms about a more subtle, but possibly far more impactful change that also came out. So what exactly is this game-breaking change? What about it is so important, and why is it only pro players and coaches that are talking about it? Well, let's jump right into the video and answer all of these questions. But first, just a quick reminder, I do coaching of players of any rank, Iron through to Challenger, which you can check out on my Metafy. So now, just head on down and follow the link in the description below. Just a few days ago, one of the League of Legends game designers posted this picture to Twitter, highlighting some of the harder to find changes of patch 13.10. Whilst all of the changes here have their own significance, we'll be focusing in on this first one here. Except for the first spawn of minions, mid lane minions will meet at the same time as side lane minions. It was later clarified that this change was only going to take place for the first 14 minutes of the game, with the waves reverting back to their normal state after this time, which you can see was met by a ton of praise in the replies by some notable faces from the League of Legends pro scene. But still, this change is going to dramatically slow down how fast the game can be played in the first 14 minutes, which is going to encourage this boring gameplay style of picking full scaling everywhere, as well as killing entirely some certain champions, playstyles, as well as nerfing a lot of the skill expression that pro teams like to use in the early game. So to explain exactly what this change is and how it's going to have an impact, I'm going to show you this example. So currently, the only limiting factor that stops people being able to do high-level macro is the fact that they can't kill a wave quick enough and they don't have enough move speed to make it in time for the staggered waves. So here you will see the wave arrive in mid lane, as per usual, but the wave in top still isn't there yet. And this is going to work vice versa. So because Aatrox already has a tier 2 pair of shoes and enough damage to quickly kill the wave, he can kill this wave and instantly start running towards mid. Presumably, this pins his opponent under the tower, meaning that his opponent can't respond to whatever play Aatrox does now. Because Aatrox makes it mid lane quick enough in time to defend this minion wave, he can show up mid with the numbers advantage, essentially transferring his push from one lane to the other. And this is what lets him allow to do things like transfer his priority in preparation for a Herald, or in order to show up mid and go for a tower dive with a numbers advantage. Now you can probably imagine that after this patch comes out, for the first 14 minutes of the game, plays like this aren't going to be possible. If Aatrox pushes that top wave and walks mid, by the time he gets there, the wave's already dead and there's no play to be had. But by far, the role impacted by this the most will be mid lane. At the moment, if you pick a scaling mid laner and do nothing but sit under your tower and wave clear, your team's going to get run over. The enemy mid lane is going to constantly make it in time for the side wave to either gank your team on that wave or use it to dive and get your tier 1 side lane towers. But after this changes, none of this will be possible at all during the laning phase. This means that roaming champions like Quinn, Talon, and Vex are going to receive a direct nerf, as they're going to be really hit hard at their ability to roam, which is what their champion identity is supposed to do. But to see the extent of how damaging these changes can be, look at a champion like Twisted Fate. Here's an example of a sequence that Twisted Fate players next patch might find themselves in. So first of all, we start off by pushing in our mid wave, remembering that at this moment, bot wave is already met. We take the necessary 5 to 10 seconds to kill the wave before walking into bot river and getting in range to ult bot lane. But because the wave's already been bot lane for 10 seconds, by the time I get in ult range, it's already dead. Meaning that now I have a choice. Either I return to mid and get nothing, just trading even in farm with my mid laner, or I sit in river for the next 20 seconds, waiting for the next wave to arrive. And then when I make my play and ult bot lane, even if the play succeeds and end up crashing a wave into tower and start taking the enemy bot tower, if I look back mid, the wave mid has arrived at the same time, meaning that at best, that opponent playing mid lane who was just stuck under his tower is now instead trading down my mid tower at the same rate at what I'm taking his bot tower. Meaning that there's no real reason to play an early game champion like TF when no matter what my opponent plays or what I do, they can always trade back evenly. We would much rather just play an AFK wave clear scaling champion like Victor or Veigar, scale into the late game by trading evenly early, and then have a far more useful ult once we get into teamfights. But it's not just mid lane that these changes apply to. Even for AD carry, champions like Ashe, Varus, and Kalista are going to have a bit of a nerf. A lot of their strengths comes from either roaming mid and using their ultimate to gank the enemy mid laner, or using your ultimate to set up the play when your mid laner roams to you. So now that you don't have a threat of people roaming to you and no need to set up your own play for your mid laner, we're going to start seeing more of champions like Vayne, Twitch, and Kog'Maw. And to complement this, supports are going to start playing enchanters. Because they're stronger in lane and there's no ability to really transfer your lead into an adjacent lane pre-14 minutes, you're going to see a lot more lane dominant supports that pair well with these hyper carry AD carries. So a lot more Karma and Lulu, and a bit of Yuumi because you can't punish it. Even top lane, a role that is already so isolated from the rest of the map in these early stages of the game, is going to have another play taken away from what it can do. Now, when you get priority playing a champion like Kled or Ornn, when the usual play would be to run mid and use your ultimate to gank, suddenly you're not going to have that option anymore, and you're going to be even more restricted to playing on an island. So you may as well just play something super scaling, or just sit in your own lane and play Nasus. Now, while some people that I've spoken to have called this an indirect buff to jungle, which I think in a big part is true, now that lanes can't directly roam to each other and influence each other in the first 14 minutes, this leaves jungle as the only role that can do so. While this is true and there's a lot of merit to that, I think there's some skill expression and some creative plays that are taken away from jungle. For example, let's say that I have Herald and I'm looking to use it bot lane. I walk into bot lane, facilitating my bot lane to push the wave into tower. Just as I'm about to place Herald, I see the opposing team jungler standing with his bot lane under the tower. Now, of course, I don't want to place Herald in front of 3 enemies. I can do better than that. In this current patch, I could quickly run to mid lane and place Herald there, arriving just as there's a wave and crash the Herald and a minion wave into the enemy tower. And I know I'm going to be doing this with a numbers advantage as well, because I've got a quicker rotate through river than what the enemy jungler does. Since I've cut off his rotate, he has to take the longer path through the jungle, meaning that by the time he gets there, I've already crashed the wave and placed my Herald. But now, if I want to place my Herald with a minion wave, by the time I run to mid, I have to wait for 15 seconds for the next wave to arrive, which completely eliminates the advantage I have of having a quicker rotate, meaning that even though the enemy jungler has a slower rotate through his jungle, he's going to still make it in time to defend mid on that Herald play if I try to make it there. Now, I think you can see how a seemingly unimpactful change like this can have such a big impact on the game when you're playing at a top level, and why so many pro players and coaches are so upset about this. In my opinion, it removes a lot of skill expression and creative plays that pro players can do in the first 14 minutes, while removing a lot of early game team comps that people might like to play. But in my opinion, for the average player, I think that this change is very good. Right, in a big part caters towards the casual player. And for the casual player, they like playing their lane. Imagine you're having a back and forth with your opponent, trading back solo kills, having the time of your life, and suddenly a random Qiyana comes into your lane and one-shots you. You're not going to enjoy that. And so Riot in that sense like to cater for that casual player. Of course, it removes a bit of skill expression from that person who roamed because they had to go through a whole lot of steps to get there, but for your casual player, they don't see the game like this. They just see a fed mid laner showing up to their lane and ruining all their fun. Now, while I hope this isn't true, my big fear is that when the next pro season comes around, you're going to see a lot slower games, a lot more scaling team comps, and a lot more of this. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Make sure to leave a sub if you enjoyed the video. And if learning more and getting better at League of Legends is something you want to get into, come check out the classes I'm running at Gosu Academy. You're going to be able to level up your game up to twice as fast with 3 sessions a week run by myself and other professional coaches. And with this class structure, we're able to keep things cheaper, meaning you can access 12 coaching sessions with a variety of different coaches for less than the price of a normal one-on-one session. And if you use my code ROGUE at checkout, you're going to get the first month free, so you can easily drop in on one of my sessions and check out exactly what it's all about.